All right, welcome everybody to our first student support team event of the year. For those of you, raise of hands, for those in the room, how many of you are like first semester students? Anybody? Okay, how about second or third, like still in your first year? Second year students, third years, fourth? Awesome, we have a nice mix, and we have a really nice mix online too, which is fantastic. My name is Sarah Flanagan. I'm the head of our IPE committee. We have lots of IPE and student support team members in the crowd today too. So if students do have any questions, feel free to reach out to any of the faculty or staff that you see here today. Before we get started, just a couple of housekeeping items. Those of you online, thank you for joining us. We're sorry that I can't send you food through the computer. That technology hasn't been created yet, but I hope you're enjoying your own lunch. Everybody who's in the room, as you come in, or if you kind of go through, we have bento boxes with healthy little snack foods to comprise a lunch. If you run out and you're still hungry, just quietly go back and refill. That's totally cool. If you are wanting to use this for IPE credit, that is fantastic. Please do so. This is approved for either the knowledge category or the community category. So be thinking as you're listening to Becky about how you could use this information personally, but also professionally, maybe with patients or clients that you're working with out in the community. And then just make sure that if you are doing it for IPE, that you turn in your reflection right away. Okay, there's a 90-day limit, and that sounds like a ton. It is, but that means people forget. So what I would do, all of you, I'd encourage you by before Monday, when classes start again, between now and over the weekend, submit your reflection so that you don't have that fall off your radar. Okay. Without further ado, I'd like to introduce Becky Dickinson. Becky is our guest speaker today. Becky happens to be a medical imaging student here in our online MI program at the college, and she's also a health coach. So when we were thinking about what topics we wanted to have, first and foremost, we always look to our students. So the events that we plan every year for student support team are based on your guys' feedback, topics you tell us that you want to learn more about, things that you want personally or professionally. And so Becky was generous enough to respond to our invitation to come today. So I don't want to take up more time with me talking. She's the expert here. If you have questions, Becky's okay with you asking them as we go. Otherwise, you can jot them down and we can have some time at the end as well. So without further ado, let's welcome Becky. Yay!
Thank you. Okay. Can you guys hear me? Yeah. Okay. Perfect. So like she said, I was a student, graduated 2009 from medical imaging, but now I'm back. I'm back for the 3D printing classes. Yes. Yes. Shout out to Blair. Yes. So no, I was very excited when Trish Weber reached out to me regarding the food and feelings, and really the topic, the title, I was like, I love that has already been a link, that your food you eat reflects the feelings you have. So a lot of people may not even think that, or maybe you didn't, and that is just fine. We're going to kind of go over a lot of it today. Maybe if we can go next. Oh, back's coming off here. It's on. Oh.
Now try.
Oh, here we go.
Is it going?
Yeah. Here we go. All right. So here are just kind of some bullet points. What will you walk away with today? So we're going to touch on physiology, focus, and language, maybe a little bit different physiology than you're used to talking about. The gut-brain connection, kind of what that is, and can I improve that? Kind of a plated visual. I'm a very visual person, so if I can see something, I'm more likely to remember it or implement it. We'll talk about mealtime habits, and then blood sugar roller coaster, labels 101, and then just kind of some swaps and savings. So jumping right in here, physiology, focus, and language. I love this quote by Tony Robbins: where focus goes, energy flows. So obviously we can implement this in any area of our life. It doesn't have to be related to food. It can be related to your studies. It can be related to your job, your relationships, anything. Wherever you focus more, that is where your energy will go. Kind of makes sense. So regarding that, when you look at the next bullet, thoughts lead to feelings, lead to your behaviors. How many in here or online have had that thought of, oh my gosh, this test is gonna not be good. Or I hate Mondays. Oh my gosh, here comes another Monday, right? So isn't it kind of comforting to know that, okay, my brain isn't so unique that it created that thought, right? A lot of people have those same thoughts. But also how comforting to know that you can control your thoughts if you are aware of them, okay? That awareness is super, super key. So kind of touching on that, what do you guys think is the most important conversation you have every day? Anybody can kind of shout out, or I don't know if Greta's looking online. What's the most important conversation you have every day? With yourself. I heard it. Boom, right? Yeah. And what is that conversation? Is it a kind one? Is it motivating, or is it kind of down, demeaning, like doesn't really uplift you? Just not that you had to answer, just something to think about. So next I'm going to kind of focus on a power pose. And this is kind of where the physiology is coming in. So there was a study done with this group, and for 2 minutes, they had this group, they had said, select a high power pose. So this group, for 2 minutes, they chose a high power pose, whatever they wanted to do, a high power pose for 2 minutes. They swabbed their cheek, did lab tests, and just from that pose, a high power pose, their testosterone increased by 20% and their cortisol decreased by 25. So testosterone, good hormone to have, especially if you're going, say, into an interview, into a presentation, into a test, into anything that you want to have that, like, I am strong, I can do this, kind of that motivating thought. When they told them to do the opposite, choose a low power pose for 2 minutes, their testosterone decreased 10%, cortisol increased 15%. So kind of think about, where could you use this? Just simply changing your physiology, right? Your physiology changes your hormones. Like, what? Did you ever think about that? And I also, this is not up here, I've heard recently that if you are even multitasking, if you are in lecture, you're scrolling on your phone or thinking about, oh my gosh, I had to do this when I get home, or whatever it may be, you retain 10% of that information. 10%. Okay. So another kind of thing in the back of your mind, physiology can change a ton. So have you guys thought of any areas where you could use this? I kind of gave some examples, but maybe you have some different ideas of where you could use a high power pose to kind of increase your confidence. I say test time. I'm like, going into lab or going to test out on something, like, why not? Not that you have to be right there in the room doing this for 2 minutes, but even in your dorm or your house before you go in. Okay, next, gut brain or gut immune hormone connection. Who has heard of this? I feel like it's a big buzzword right now, the gut brain connection. Yeah, have you dove into kind of the research at all? No? Yeah, which is fine. I feel like when I was in college, I came straight from high school. This was not on my radar at all. But that's why I love that I'm here talking with you guys today. I know there's probably people at different stages of their life, not right from high school necessarily, but another quote kind of that I love: if you listen when your body whispers, you won't have to hear it scream. Dr. Anita Johnston. So what does that mean to you guys? What does that say to you? If you listen to your body when it whispers, you won't have to hear it scream. I'm like, I hear somebody whispering. Early warning signs. Yeah. So we'll talk in a little bit kind of about insulin resistance kind of being like the pre diabetes. So it's like, if you can listen to your body, if it's giving you these signs like, oh, I had this kind of ache here, this pain here, or gosh, I'm having these headaches, kind of, not just ignoring those, really listening to your body. And obviously we've all heard about like your gut instinct or butterflies, just kind of something to link. Like, I feel like a lot of times when there is a pain, something, we just think about that one area. I have this headache right here. I have this right upper quadrant right here. So it's like you focus on that area only, where the body is so miraculous. It's connected everywhere, obviously, but when we have a pain or something, we just focus on that one area. So when you think like that gut instinct, okay, it's coming from like a thought in the brain, leading to a feeling, leading to a behavior, but also just like different things, trying to connect things. Like when you're nervous about something, you might have to go to the bathroom. So it's like, oh, that thought, and it like triggers different things, different hormones, and oh, I got to go to the bathroom, things like that. So now we're going to kind of touch on this gut brain connection. Have you guys heard of leaky gut? I assume since some of you have heard of the gut brain, you've probably heard of leaky gut. I'm going to go to the next slide, but I'll come back to this just because there's an awesome visual. So leaky gut. So this is like a tight junction. So we have your gut lining, nice tight junctions, nothing's getting through these linings or those cells. But right here, we have a leaky gut. So we have just those little kind of pockets there. And when you have leaky gut, so you consume your food, if you have a leaky gut, that food gets broken down, but then those particles leak out into your system. And what that does is it causes just overall systemic inflammation. Okay. So when you have those tight junctions, your food is digested, it's assimilated, it's kind of dispersed where it needs to be. But that leaky gut, we'll kind of talk about here, it can just lead to all sorts of kind of, like I said, chronic inflammation, which can lead to a lot of just comorbidities, really. And then kind of looking at how is the gut and the brain connected? And it's really through basically these two. We have the vagus nerve that's at the base of the brainstem, goes down to the gut, and the HPA axis. Anybody, have you guys heard of the HPA axis? No? Okay, so when you are in a like fight or flight kind of system, your hypothalamus, it talks to the pituitary, which talks to the adrenals, sitting on top of your kidneys, says release cortisol. So cortisol, stress. So that chronic stress, if we are constantly in that heightened fight or flight system, otherwise known as the sympathetic nervous system, you're constantly going to have that cortisol that is being released, which can lead to this leaky gut. And what is somewhat frustrating, but I will also tell you of ways to kind of get out of that sympathetic nervous system, is that our brains do not know the difference. Our ancestors, they came from like, they were in fight or flight when they were running from a bear or something. Our brain does not know that we're not running from bears. Like, you may be stressed about a test. You may be stressed about a job interview. It doesn't know that. It doesn't know that it's just a little, not a minor thing, but you're not running from a bear. Okay. So that is kind of the relation, the vagus nerve and the HPA axis. Going back to here. So we talked about that leaky gut. So the endotoxins going out into the blood system. That in turn affects those hormones, serotonin, dopamine, serotonin, like that feel good, dopamine, exciting hormones. Those are all decreased. So that's a direct relation to your food, whatever food you're taking in. Is it causing a leaky gut and then affecting your serotonin, dopamine, which reflects your feelings? So there's that kind of correlation. Kind of touching on the depression and anxiety linked to IBS. This was a fascinating study I read. I think it was out of the Netherlands. The Netherlands, they did a 9-year study that they did a study of they measured the endotoxins in someone's blood and the severity of their leaky gut, and they could say how much anxiety that person was going to have. So if they had IBS, they were 52% more likely to have depression or anxiety. Instead of a group that was the same age without IBS, it was less than 19% that they would have depression or anxiety. So sometimes a lot of times think of, I have little kids and I know that their brains aren't all the way developed, but if they've been to grandma's or something where food choices might not be what I would really feed them. And they're having these tantrums and I'm like, what did you eat? What did you eat at grandma's? So, and it's not only in children. Like I know I relate it a lot of times. I watch sports or I have older nieces and nephews and I see coaches or like, have you ever thought of like a coach that's freaking out? It's like, okay, it might be a stressful situation, but what did they eat today? No, we don't usually think about that, right? But maybe now you will. So now we're going to kind of touch on like things to help the system, maybe help that leaky gut, help calm that vagus nerve. So sleep. I know college, sometimes that is very poor. But what is that quality of sleep? Are you getting enough sleep? Because if you're not, that is going to be another area that will kind of cause that cortisol level to be chronically heightened. Okay. Where you're getting enough sleep, you're letting your body recover, rest. Cortisol does naturally spike in the morning because it's like, all right, let's get up, let's go. But if you're chronically getting low amount of sleep, your brain doesn't shut off, that leads to that just chronic elevated cortisol. So stress relief. I know when I was at Clarkson, I forget the name of the class, but we had a course that was for like stress management or something that we went and got massages and went and smelled the roses. And I'm like, yes, that was awesome. Have you guys done that class yet? Take it if it's still an option. It was great. So just kind of doing some deep breathing. Maybe you meditate. I know some people think meditating is sitting crisscross applesauce, meditating for hours on end. No, it doesn't have to be that. It can be for 30 seconds, just going for a walk outside in the fresh air. This weather's awesome. I love it. Just finding, there's so many different ways to relieve stress. Exercising. Next is just that vagus nerve. So stimulating that vagus nerve. If you Google vagal nerve stimulation, there's kind of some odd ones, but there's other ones just like deep breathing or gargling water, humming, because it's basically, like I said, base of the brainstem down to the gut. So it's like just right back there, like you can just stimulate that and it calms you. Next, kind of foods, like we're talking food and feelings, foods that will help versus harm. So probiotic rich foods or supplements, a probiotic supplement. Some foods that are rich in probiotics, sauerkraut, that's the one that comes to my top of my head. Kimchi, kombucha, watch for the added sugar though. There's lots of them out there. Gluten-free, I know this aisle of the grocery store has definitely been broadened lately. And I know it was because people, like maybe they really do have a gluten allergy, but in reality, seeing what those foods are sprayed with, all the chemicals, really we should all be gluten-free, because if it's not gluten-free, gluten products are sprayed with so much glyphosate, other chemicals that cause that leaky gut. So you may not have a gluten allergy, but the chemicals that are sprayed on them is not good for your gut. And my husband is a farmer, so him and I kind of have deep conversations about this and the farming practices. And I'm like, maybe you and I were brought together because we need to figure this out for rural Iowa, Nebraska. And then processed foods. Obviously, we will touch on that in a little bit, but just those processed foods, the inflammatory oils they're cooked in, the high sugar content, all of that can lead to a leaky gut. Any questions, comments? Yes. Glyphosate is a huge one. Oh, yes. So the question was what specific chemicals are being sprayed that break down that barrier? Yeah. So like other than chemicals, so stress, that cortisol, chronic cortisol elevation can increase it. But yeah, basically the foods, the high sugar content, that the artificial sweeteners, inflammatory oils like vegetable oil, canola oil, things like that. And we'll kind of touch on that a little bit too. Yeah, another question, you bet. Some people do have a gluten allergy. So some people may have an allergy to that, but like I said, more people, it's just what is sprayed on the gluten products that can be really poor for your gut lining. Does that clarify? You can check with her. Yeah, you can check with her. You bet, him or her. Any other questions? I love them. Perfect. Okay, so we kind of touched on this. I just love that visual of what you see over here, like cortisol, all these things increase, GI motility, tight junctions, all these things, dopamine, serotonin decrease. So now this is like that plate it visual. So if we were putting food on our plate for lunch, supper, this is ideally what we would like to have. I know it's not going to happen every time. It doesn't happen for me every time. Not about perfection, just about progress. So ideally, half of our plate would be vegetables, okay? And then about the other quarter and quarter is protein and non-starchy carbs with a little sliver of healthy fats. Healthy fats. Healthy fats are huge. Our brain is basically made of fats. So I know back in the 90s when it was like, no fat, anything, that was so poor for our systems. As long as it's healthy fats, they're so good. So if you guys had to say what order, veggie, protein, carbs, healthy fats, I feel like a lot of times they're just, it's like you cook with the healthy fats, or sometimes you'll have like avocado, walnuts, things like that with your meal. But what order would you say is the best way to consume if you were thinking about like your blood sugar? Protein first? Anybody else? Protein and carbs kind of together. Okay. Anyone else? Yeah. Yeah. Perfect. Yes. So technically when we're thinking about blood glucose, diabetes in mind, so veggies, consuming your veggies first, it's kind of like getting those, especially greens, broccoli, the spinach, getting that in, it kind of fills all of those grooves kind of, and then you follow it with protein, and that's the sustained energy, helps keep fuller longer, followed by the carb. Now, another kind of question. So not that holidays are really soon, but they'll be here before we know it. When would you have your pumpkin pie in the mix? Not have it at all, but let's be real. If around holidays, we're going to have a little sweets. When would you ideally have your dessert? A lot of times I know we eat our meal, we let it settle, and then we go back and have dessert. For breakfast, I mean, just have it right away. Spike that blood glucose right away in the morning. Ideally, you should have your dessert right after your meal. So that way you have the veggies, the protein, the carbs, and then it won't, you kind of set yourself up for like a gradual blood glucose spike, where if you wait, you have your meal and it's like a steady, and then you have that pumpkin pie, it's like, whoa. And we'll talk about the blood sugar roller coaster here soon. So you can still have some dessert, just try to have it with your meal, okay? Kind of blunts that blood sugar spike. Any questions on that, I guess? I love that you knew veggies first. Okay. There you go. There you go. There you go. So now we're going to switch to mealtime habits. So it's not only what you eat, but also how you eat. So I know when I was in college, it was a lot of, I didn't have a smartphone then, but it was check Facebook, and then I'll do this, and I'll have a bite, and then I'll study. So a lot of multitasking, scrolling on your phone, maybe you're driving and eating. So those things all put us in that basically chronic fight or flight system, okay? So when we are in that fight or flight, that sympathetic nervous system, digestion shuts down because it thinks you're running from a bear. And I don't have time to digest right now. I'm not thinking about that. So through my health coaching, I've either had people that they will eat and they have like a brick in their stomach and they're like, like that's why it won't digest, because you're constantly running, and blood flow is not going to the stomach. It's going to the extremities of the brain to go. Like, I'm running from a bear, but you're not, hopefully. So in order to get to that parasympathetic, to where it will be that rest and digest system, then you need to do maybe some breath work. I know it sounds maybe cheesy, but no one knows you're doing it just before a meal. We call it 5-5-7 breath work. So you breathe in for 5, hold it for 5, and then exhale for 7. Kind of try to have the exhale be longer. And literally just doing a few of those big, deep breaths can trick your brain into that parasympathetic or rest and digest system. Okay. And then another kind of little hack is chewing your food. It sounds ridiculous, but if you had a competition with your roommate or friends at supper, if you had a competition who could chew their food longer, you'd be like, oh my gosh, I would probably swallow right now, but I'm going to win this competition. So it's crazy how we just get in a hurry and you just shove it down your throat and down the hatch. And then that causes so much stress on our stomach. Like, oh my gosh, now I had to go to work and I had to assimilate this and maybe use some of these nutrients. Instead, if we just chew our food, kind of start that process, get those digestive enzymes going, let the saliva work, that really helps out our GI motility and using those nutrients. Any questions on this? I feel like this is huge in the healthcare. Like, very rarely, I feel like I coach so many nurses and physicians that they're like, well, I don't have time to sit down and eat. Well, or do you want to pour from an empty bucket? Or do you want to make you a priority? Can you really be your best for your patients if you're running on E? I know a lot of people, they compare it to like their cell phone battery. We wouldn't be caught dead with our cell phone like at 1%, right? You'd be freaking out. But what if you are at 1%? How long can you stay there and really serve your patients? So now here we are, blood sugar roller coaster. Any questions on the mealtime habits, I guess? Just breathe and chew, okay? So this blood sugar roller coaster, kind of a description of, I talked about earlier, insulin resistance being like a pre-diabetes. So you guys have probably maybe talked about blood glucose, how that works. So kind of a quick synopsis of like what that looks like. So say we eat food, you guys ate some food, it's going to your belly, it's going to get broken down into glucose. It goes out into your bloodstream. And that is the signal, glucose in your bloodstream, it says, okay, pancreas, you need to release some insulin, because insulin, that is basically the key that lets glucose into your muscles, fat, liver cells. Okay. So that would be a normal process. If insulin is released, it opens the door and it's like, come on in, glucose, and it uses it for your energy or stores it later for energy. If you have insulin resistance, same process, insulin is released, it goes up to the cell and the key doesn't work. It's like, well, what the heck? So then it releases more insulin and then it's like, this isn't working. So then you have this added blood glucose because it can't get into the cells because the insulin can't open the door. That kind of makes sense. Yeah, so up goes the blood glucose. Maybe you ate a bagel and had a coffee with 30 grams of sugar in it to get going for the day. And it's like, woo, spike, and then crash. And then what is it that you want when you're in that crash? Sugar. Because it's like, I need energy. Where do I go for energy? Yeah. So kind of some tips and tricks to avoid that up and down, like we talked about, veggies, protein, then your carb or dessert. So I never was a coffee drinker until I started working in healthcare. And I was like, oh, I see where they're coming from here. But when I do have my coffee now, I have it with like collagen. So it has some protein in it. And I also don't ever drink it on an empty stomach because it just kind of hurts my stomach a little bit. So just kind of being smart or strategizing how you're going to eat some of those things. Apple cider vinegar before a meal, just a tablespoon of apple cider vinegar. I know someone's like, oh, it does not taste the best, but you can even water it down, have like a little shot before a meal. That just helps your digestive enzymes get going, help digest that food. And then a post-meal walk, even just like a 5-minute walk after you eat is huge to keep your levels from just, instead of going like this, just kind of keep them a little bit more gradual. Any ahas or like, oh, I already knew that. You can really, it's actually advised to go right away after you eat, not even like waiting 30 minutes. So yeah, we need to all just leave right now and go walk. Yeah, because it really blunts that blood sugar spike. Okay, and I know a lot of people, again, in healthcare, it's like either they say, I don't have time to eat, or you're literally eating while you're going, but then you're in that fight or flight because you haven't sat down and your body isn't acknowledging that you are having this meal. Okay, label reading 101. Who kind of pays attention to their labels, or is it just you buy the normal stuff and you go along your way? Go along your way, or you look at them. Yeah, you look at them. Yeah. Yes, I will talk about that. Yes, I know a lot of people are like, how many calories? How many calories? I don't think I ever look at calories, honestly. These are the 3 things. How long is that ingredient list? Is it longer than your Christmas list? Or I feel like now, as I get older, my Christmas list isn't long, but the amount, the money that those things cost is higher. The carb to fiber ratio, and then the added sugar. Okay, so we are going to, so just thinking about that list, 1, can you pronounce any of the stuff on there? Because I'm sure if you can't pronounce it, it's a lot of chemicals. And then especially, so when it's listed, I'm sure you guys may know this, the order that it's in. So the first ingredient, that there's the most of that, but sugar is very sneaky because there's like over 100 names for sugar. So maybe sugar isn't the first, second, or even third ingredient, but it may be the 4th, 5th, 6th, 8th, 9th, 10th, 11th. So really there's probably more sugar than the first ingredient listed. So kind of being very mindful of that when you glance at a label. The carb to fiber, for some reason, this was really tricky until I explained it with some of my clients, but literally just taking the total carb. So say it's 40 grams of carbs divided by the total fiber. 40, say there's 2 grams of fiber because I'm not good at math. 20 to 1, that would be. So ideally, I would ask people I would coach to aim for below 10 to 1. Anything above 10 to 1, we would term them red foods. Try to stay away from those red foods. So just not saying that you had to totally take out all red foods because that's pretty much impossible in our society. But just being mindful of that. I laugh because my husband, I would buy every once in a while those steamer bags of like quinoa and rice or whatever. And I made sure I looked at the labels, and the kind I got was a decent one. Well, he brought home is it Mr. Ben or Mr. Ben's or something like that. What's that? Uncle Ben's, Mr. Ben's, Uncle Ben's. It was a 32 to 1 carb to fiber. I was like, why do they even make this? Why? So yes, I don't like wasting food, so we ate it sparingly, like mix it in, so it's not like one person was eating it. So yeah, that's just carb divided by fiber. And then the added sugar. Ideally, we would all have 25 grams, males 30 grams or less of sugar. I know that can be in 1 Starbucks drink easily. So just being very mindful of the added sugar. So looking at these labels, I was hoping it would kind of show up. Okay, can you guys online see it very well? I'll tell you what these are, or you can guess what they are. Which one of these would you choose to have? Neither. There you go. Water or coffee. Smart choice. So you know it's a drink? Yeah. Yep. Yep. Okay. So this on the left, what's that? Nope, that's Gatorade. And we give our athletes Gatorade all the way. I know. And then this is Body Armor Light. So definitely a better option. It has 0 grams added sugar, just 2 grams of total sugar. But yeah, the carb a little bit. But if you're an athlete, I would definitely go this route versus second ingredient being sugar, 34 grams of sugar. Okay, next one. You can obviously tell what this is, but yep, yogurt. Which one would you choose? You guys read it, okay? Okay. Think looking at the ingredient list and then just the carb to fiber and that added sugar. This one? Yeah, good job. So this is just plain whole fat Chobani yogurt. Definitely I go with the whole fat because healthy fats and it helps you stay fuller longer. I know people are like, I would not just eat plain yogurt, neither would I, but just having a bag of frozen berries, put that in there, put a little bit of maple syrup if you need a little sweetness. Instead of, and this is like, this one over here, I've seen yogurts that most of them advertise for kids. It's like 20 grams of added sugar. I'm like, thanks for putting a cartoon character on this for my kid to want, and it's 20 grams of added sugar. So yeah, another one. Oh, this, I did this one because this was, I'm kind of giving it away. This was consumed by my roommate almost every day. Do you know what it is? Pizza rolls. This is like a, I think it was like a Amy's pizza or something. So it's like, you can actually read the ingredients. It's not the best carb to fiber, but definitely better than 30-1 over there. So this over here, this goes together and then this goes together. This is the last one here. Would you choose? That one over there, 26 to divided by 3 over there. One would you choose? Guesses? This one? Yeah. So if you see enriched wheat flour, basically put it back. Okay, it's been stripped of all its nutrients. Organic whole wheat, so it wasn't, that wheat wasn't sprayed with glyphosate. And then yes, the added sugar is a little bit higher on this one. This one's 2, that one's 3. But yes, these ingredients much better. So just bread. I think this was Dave's Killer Bread. This might have been Sara Lee or something, maybe. I'm not sure. And not that I'm promoting certain, like, I just like to know, like if I'm at a grocery store, oh, they said this was okay. So just kind of to wrap up here. So if you have any questions, kind of swaps and then some savings. Swaps. So we talked about briefly those inflammatory oils. So frequently, like the processed foods. I don't think there's probably a single fast food restaurant that cooks with avocado oil or extra virgin olive oil. They get the 5-gallon bucket of canola oil or whatever that is high on omega-6s. So 60 years ago, the ratio of omega-6 to omega-3 was 1:2, and now it's 25:1. That is so much inflammation in our body just from the oils that we're using. So just, like I said, I do not waste food, but if you have vegetable oil in your cupboard or canola oil, just swapping it out for, I use avocado or extra virgin olive oil and coconut oil. High fructose corn syrup. This is really sneaky. It can be in your spaghetti sauce, your ketchup, things that you wouldn't think it's in, but this is a big contributor to that leaky gut and can lead to elevated triglycerides. Those artificial sweeteners. I was working one day with this physician. She regularly had a diet Mountain Dew, and I just kind of keep my mouth shut when I'm in the presence of some of them, because they're like, well, it's diet and it's okay. And I'm like, "Oh, okay," but it's full of artificial sweeteners, which are horrible on your gut, causing leaky gut and all the other gamut of things. Which I kind of failed to mention. There was this analogy that I heard it regarding to leaky gut and the systemic inflammation. So say, I love analogies, I'm very visual, like I said. So say there is a city with 50 houses and there is a fire in one of the kitchens and the fire alarm's going off. The fire department can usually likely find it if there's no other fire alarms going off, right? You have one house fire alarm going off, it goes there, it puts it out. If you have 50 houses with 50 fire alarms going off, but one fire, how long is it going to take for the fire department to find where that little fire is if there's 50 fire alarms going off? So you're like, where in the heck is she going with this? But if that is like, you have leaky gut, systemic inflammation, it's like you have all these little fires in your body, and say you get COVID, and it's like, well, shoot, I'm already trying to put out all these other fires. So you get this other virus, bacteria, whatever, and it just gets bogged down. That was why all over the news, comorbidities with COVID, because it's like they already have all these other things that they're trying to handle, the body, that it adds one more thing on and it just can't handle it. Okay. I forgot to mention that when we were talking on the gut brain connection. Does that make sense? Yeah. Okay. So now kind of just some savings, because I know when I was in college, money wasn't the big thing there. So I know organic, it can be expensive, but those organic isn't going to be sprayed with the glyphosate, even though now, sadly, glyphosate is even getting in our rainwater. It's just everywhere, sadly, but just trying to limit those chemicals, pesticides. So buying in frozen, it's fine to buy frozen. It'll stay longer. Like I said, just have it with your yogurt or on oatmeal or something like that. Add some flavor, or even canned, but just watching that those aren't full with high fructose corn syrup. Cost comparison. Sometimes, especially with condiments, you will have one, say, jelly with full sugar, and then the one right next to it is no high fructose corn syrup and all the additives. So, and sometimes just look at the price. It might be even less. Buying in bulk if you can, if the freezer space allows. And then obviously cooking for yourself versus eating out. I know sometimes that's easier said than done when you're short on time, but just trying to plan ahead. And then I know I mentioned the Starbucks drinks. Just don't spend your money on all that liquid sugar that's destroying your gut. Any questions? Yes. Sodium. Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, I know we're talking about sugars, but what about all the sodium in canned vegetables, like in soups and stuff?
Yes, I usually try to go for the lower sodium. I know a lot of people think sodium is the culprit, but really, sodium isn't really the biggest idea. A lot of times sodium, we are low on sodium in some, not in all. I'm not saying that in all. Every body is different. A lot of times sodium gets a bad rap, but it's not necessarily, I think it's more the inflammatory oils, the sugars that are the culprit. Other question? Yes, online. I don't know that for sure. That is a great question. I'm sure you can find various studies that either prove it or go against it. It probably eliminates some of it, I'm sure, just getting the liquid off of it. Yeah. Great question. Yes.
Foods that are good for or bad for like inflammatory conditions like rheumatoid arthritis.
Yes. So great question. Basically, yeah, those inflammatory processes, eating a anti-inflammatory diet. So going towards those fruits and veggies. And I know this may sound crazy to people as well, but there are some foods, even though they may be healthy, like I'll say personally for me, cabbage doesn't agree with me. It's a healthy food, but so you really just having that mindfulness and listening to your body of what it agrees with. If you eat something and you're crazy bloated, that's your body whispering to you, like maybe don't eat that. It's not just when you have the greasy foods. So just that mindfulness.
Like
Yeah.
nightshades. Like
Yeah, the
tomatoes.
nightshades are a big one for people that can cause that. And like the tomatoes, the eggplant, yeah, that a lot of people, they're like, well, it's healthy. And yeah, but your body may be saying, no, that's not good. Yeah. Other. I love that question. So he says he's been eating terribly for many, many years. How would you turn that leaf over? I am huge on baby steps. Okay. You're not going to, so if you think of your habits as like a trail, you've been walking this trail for many, many, many years, and literally just a 1 degree change. So swapping out that high calorie sugar drink, one swap a day, just going like starting with that. And then you just start to slowly beat down this other path on this trail. And eventually that other path will get overgrown and you'll just keep going this path. Okay. So really baby steps and accountability. That is where, as a health coach, that is huge. Like people don't realize how great accountability is. Not that you have to have a coach, but just someone to check in on you. Just say, hey, how many Starbucks have you had this week? Or how many did you have veggies with every meal? It's really making your goal customized to you and making it realistic. Okay. It's kind of like the New Year's resolutions. I'm going to go to the gym 7 days a week, even though I go no times right now, and I'm going to do it. Well, we all see how that goes. So making baby steps, having an accountability partner to really check in. And like I said, making it realistic. Great question. Family. Yeah. I can totally relate to you. So that is me and my spouse a lot of times. Yep. Do you do the cooking or does she? She does. Okay. Yeah, no, I love it. So I think just kindly educating like, hey, I think this would be better not only for us. I don't know if you have kids, but it's like thinking about or your future kids. Like there's been studies that like even in the womb, like your kids' eating habits are reflected from what the mom eats when you're pregnant. I have kind of witnessed that with my 3 kids. Kiddo 1, I wasn't really thinking about food. Kiddo 3, yep, he's definitely a better eater than the oldest. So no, great idea. Just, yeah, slowly educating, not forcing it, because then you'll probably have more resistance. But just mentioning, hey, can we get some broccoli next time we're at the store? And just trying different things, making it fun. Yeah. Great question. Another one, yes. I think it depends on the company. Frozen is definitely, I would pick frozen over the canned. Just because there can be BPAs and things like that in some canned or plastic containers. So I would definitely go with frozen over canned for sure. But yeah, I know sometimes especially where we live, all the fresh stuff isn't an option all the time, unfortunately. Question is about sugars, like what is kind of a safer sugar? Yeah, I tend to go towards like monk fruit or stevia. It's just a natural. Like I said, even sweetening your, like with your yogurt, like maple syrup or honey, just something more natural. Yeah. Honestly, I do a lot on Pinterest. So the question was about recipes, like a certain website. I a lot of times just go to Pinterest, but then it's like if they have sugar or coconut sugar is a great replacement. It's a 1-to-1 replacement for regular table sugar or brown sugar. So I just kind of see those things listed and have a swap for it. So, and then if you don't know the swap, you can just Google it, like what's a healthy swap for this? So obviously we know the internet is very valuable. Yeah. Questions about dairy and inflammation. And yeah, I say that is very patient or body specific as well. I don't do dairy because I know, like from a very young age, it was like I would have cereal with milk and I would have a gut ache instantly. And I'm like, maybe it was partly because of the sugar in the cereal, but the milk, I linked it then as I was older. I'm like, oh, dairy and I do not get along. So it's very person specific, but I definitely go with the whole milk for my kids. If you can get A2 organic whole milk, if that's in your budget, I will say I do that about every other time because it is pricey. So yeah, it's, and just every company has a different way of making it. So it's like some dairy is better than others. Raw dairy, great if you have access to it. Farm fresh eggs, like everything, like, oh yeah, that's not dairy, but I was thinking of eggs. Almond milk, yeah, that's what I use is almond milk or coconut milk. I love coconut milk. Glyphosate a concern for oat milk? I would say yeah. And a lot of oat milk is filled with a lot of gums and things that, yeah, isn't the best. Yes, oat milk is very popular. Yeah, I had a friend that they'll send me pictures of labels. What do you think of this, Becky? And one was like a canned coffee drink or something. And I was like, well, the carb to fiber isn't good, but it's probably because of the oat milk in it. It was the second ingredient. But other than that, and like it had some reishi mushroom and like different things, and the sugar was like there was no sugar in it. But oh yeah, kind of had to be careful of that, just where it's from. And then I know when you're ordering at a restaurant or something, you don't know what oat milk they're using. So that's tricky. Right. Yeah. How did I go from medical imaging to health coaching? So I had been working in radiology for about 10 years. And this was after I had my third baby. And I was like, personally, I knew I could feel better. So I was like, I am just dog tired. I need to have energy to run around with my kids. And so I started looking at nutrition classes for myself. And then I stumbled across health coaching and I was like, oh my gosh, I feel like every doctor needs a health coach because physicians don't have the time to coach their patients. They're like, yeah, you're diabetic, you need to change your diet and you need to exercise. Good luck. And so then that's where slowly, it's kind of making its way to rural areas or Midwest of physicians having health coaches to back them up, help them out because they don't have those times. Or functional medicine is kind of becoming more integrative medicine, becoming more of a thought of people getting to that root cause. Because as I was working out in the field, it was like, gosh, I was helping people, but I wanted to help them in a different way. That was where I went. Was there a question online? sucrose in moderation. I believe in everything in moderation. But I would still be very mindful of the amount. Like I said, moderation. Ideally, like when I would look at labels, I prefer things to be 5 grams or less on a label. So yeah, I know, but I know a lot of times I've seen sucrose doesn't even show up as added sugar on a label. But it's an artificial sweetener. So I'm not sure sometimes how they get by with that marketing. It's sneaky, sneaky. That's why I think it's very important to educate and just look at those labels. Great questions, guys. I love it. Yes. Yeah, exercise. I know I briefly mentioned like great for stress relief, but yeah, exercise, it's good all the way down to the mitochondria, like helping just yeah. So no, exercise, I feel like you can't go wrong. You can't overdo it with exercise, because once you put too much stress on your body, like it's good to have that little bit of stress, but then not going above and beyond. And again, just listening to your body. If you're sore for 3 days, back it off a little bit. Your muscles aren't enjoying that. Great questions, guys. Yes. Supplementing protein for protein shakes. Yeah. Definitely look at the ingredients. I have protein shakes that when I was talking about the yogurt, that's another thing. My 3-year-old, that is his breakfast almost every morning, plain yogurt with vanilla protein. And I let him have some dark chocolate chips in it. Kind of like a treat, but good probiotics for his gut, protein. Yeah. But again, looking at the ingredients, there can be a lot of those out there with added sugar and gums and chemicals and whatever else. But I know I've seen that one. I haven't looked at the label of that one. I could definitely tell you some, I'll tell you outside, because I don't like to promote certain ones. People be like, she said only this kind. Because I know there's a ton out there. There's a ton out there. Yeah. You guys probably have a busy, busy day. Good. Yeah. Thank you guys. Thanks for having me.